Welcome back. In this video we are going to clean up our project a little bit. So we are going to create separate directories and folders which will be needed because at this point we are going to use models and databases, and then we already have two activities, so it makes sense to have different directories for each of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and create a new package here, and the first one will be activities. Then I create another one which I'm going to call models, and then a third one which will be my database. So in this database directory I'm going to put all the database relevant classes that we have, and the activities, of course, all of my activities. So let's drag them in there. Let's refactor, and what that does is it will create the right imports and it will adjust the imports accordingly, because now our activities, they are not inside of our EU tutorials happy places anymore, but they are on a different level. All right, so now the next thing that I want to create is a model, because we are going to need a model for our happy places, right? So I'm going to call this one happy place model, and I'm not calling it happy places model because this is the model for every single individual happy place. All right, so let's go ahead and create that. Now the happy place model will be a data class, so it will not be a normal class. It will just be a very simple data class in which I want to add the different variables that I want to have each time that I'm creating a happy place. So I want, for example, to have the ID, so a unique identifier, then the title, which is of type string. Then I want to have an image, which will be of type string, and by this the image path is meant. Then a description, because if we look at it, so we can check out our application here. We have the title, description, date, location, the image, and then also latitude and longitude. So we need to have the location in latitude and longitude as well, not just the string, which is the address of the location, but both of them. All right, so then the image, the description, so val description, which is also of type string, the date, which is also of type string, the location of type string, and then the latitude, which is of type double, and the longitude. So latitude and longitude are the two values with which you can specifically define a spot or find a spot on the Earth. All right, longitude will also be a double. All right, so this is our happy place model. So each time we create a new happy place, we want to have all of this data. And now, of course, you might say, hey, we don't have location, we don't have latitude, and we don't have longitude. Well, actually, location we do have. It's the string, right, that we get from the edit text field. But what we don't have is the longitude and latitude. Well, we will need to create those, no worries. All right, the next thing I want is a new class here. And I'm gonna create a database handler. So it will be a SQLite Open Helper class. So I'm gonna go ahead and create this class, and I'm gonna call this one database handler. All right, and it should inherit from SQLite Open Helper. So you might recall how to do that. And by the way, this is something that I would ask you to try yourself. So try to create a database helper or handler which will take care of the whole database stuff. So we will need to have a column for every single one of the values that we have for our happy places model or happy place model. So we need an ID column, we need a title column, an image column, a description column, and so forth. So we'll need columns for all of that. The table name should be happy places table, and the database name should be happy places database. Okay, and everything else I think you can already set up. So try to do that. Try to create the table. So in the onCreate method, create the table, and then add a function which will add a happy place. So you will need to put all of the different values to the content values variable before then inserting it to the database and closing the database. Okay, so please go ahead and try to do that in the database handler. And if you don't know how to do that, then check out the demo on how to use databases again. I know this is a tough one, but this one will be super helpful for you. You will learn quite a bit while struggling, so to speak. All right, so good luck with that. Alrighty, I hope you paused the video and tried it. So I'm gonna go over it. So this is the database handler. And as you might recall, we need to use SQLite OpenHelper as the class that we inherit from. Then there we need to pass in the context, the database name, the factory, which is just null, and the database version. All right, and we need those variables as companion objects. So I'm just going to use those variables here. As you can see, database version, database name, and then we also need to have a name for the table. And I'm going to call this one Happy Places Table. And then all of the column names that we have, and these column names are basically the ones that we have from our Happy Place model. Okay, so each time we create an object, we want to store that object inside of our database. And because we cannot store objects as such, we need to make sure that we have the variables of those objects in the right format, which we do here. So we create all of those column names, which are all constants. And then in the onCreate, that's where we create the Happy Place table. So we create a new table based on the name that we have in table Happy Place, which is our Happy Places table. And then we create the ID, which is our primary key of type integer, the title, which is just a text, the image, which is also a text. So strings can basically always be stored as text. And you can see key description is a text, key date is a text. So basically what I did here is I just used texts here. Even for the latitude and longitude, I also use text. Here you might have used real instead, but we're just going to use text here. Okay, and then we of course need to execute that SQLite command, which is our create happy place table command. So it's this one containing all of that. So at this point, when this database handler is, so the onCreate method is called, that's the point where our table will be created. And then in onUpgrade, well, we just say, okay, drop table if they exist, and then call the onCreate method. So nothing new here. And then the addHappyPlace function, which will return a long, which basically will be the value if it succeeded or if it didn't succeed. All right, so what we're doing is we need a writable database first, because we want to write something into the database. Then we have the content values to which we put all our values here. So we put the key title, we put the key image in, and so forth. And here you get where we get them from. So we get them from the happy place that is passed to us when we call this function. So we want to have a happy place object that is passed to us, which contains all of this information. Because it's a data class, so we can create objects of it, of course, and passing all of those values in. And then we can use all of those values to store them, or for now, to put them into the content values variable here, this one, to then go ahead and insert that to the database. So we insert that to the table, which we call Happy Place. And of course, it has a different name. It's called here Happy Places Table. So that's a very specific name. But here the variable, of course, is called table Happy Place. Then we pass in the null column hack, which is just set to null, and the content values. So that's the spot where we insert it to the database, and this returns a result which is of type long. So you can see here, insert returns a long. Well, this is a Java method here, but basically the same concepts apply. And then we close the database and we return the result. So whatever the long result was. All right, and now we can of course go ahead and save our data, because if we look at it here, all of that stuff should be saved once we click on that button. So we need to add an onClick listener for that button, and we need to run a method call, so to speak, when we click on that button. So let's go to our activity where we handle that, and that's our addHappyPlace activity. And then in the onCreate method, that's where we added all of the onClick listeners. So here I need button underscore save dot set onClick listener. and I'm gonna pass in this, because this class, this add happy place activity class, will be our onClick listener. All right, and then of course we also need to do the same thing as we did with the other r.ids here, r.id. And this time it's the button save. So once we click on button save, what do we want to do? Well, in here we want to store or save the data model to the database. Okay, that's what we're going to do later on. But for now, we need to add something which we haven't added yet. And these are variables that are important for our project to run, because we need to pass them, right? We need to, for example, have an image which is going to be the URI. So we are not really passing the image itself, but we're just wanting the URI, so the location of the image, because it doesn't make sense to recreate the image and pass the image all the time, but it makes a lot more sense to just pass in the reference. So I'm just going to create a new variable for this, private variable called save image to internal storage, and it's going to be of type URI nullable. So at the beginning it's going to be null, and then later on we can assign a value there. All right, and then we of course need to have the latitude and longitude. So I'm just going to create them, private var m latitude double, which will be 0.0, and private var m longitude, which will be also a double, and 0.0. So at this point, each time that we use the default values, we're going to be in the middle of the Atlantic, somewhere west of Africa, not too far away from Africa, I'd say. Okay, so for now, let's just set a value for the save image to internal storage. And the spots where it would make sense to do so are going to be these ones here. So here we had this variable called save image to internal storage, but here it was a immutable variable, and it was one that is only visible in the scope of this on activity result. But I of course don't only want it to use in this try and catch block, but I want to store it permanently. So I'm going to use, well, I'm just going to get rid of the val, right? So I used the exact same name, so now I'm just going to store it at the moment when we get an image from the gallery. And of course the same thing when we get an image from taking a picture with a camera. At this moment, of course, we are still not storing anything, because we are never calling this database handler method add happy place. As you can see, it's still grayed out. But that's what we're going to do in the next videos. So for now, I think it's enough for this video. It's long enough. In the next video, we're going to add a little more spice to it, and we're going to be able to store the data accordingly. Okay, so see you in the next one.